Oscar Wilde, The Picture of Dorian Gray, Part 87. Embroidered with heart-shaped groups of acanthus leaves, from which spread long-stemmed white blossoms, the details of which were picked out with silver thread and colored crystals. The Morse bore a seraph's head in gold thread-raised work. The operas were woven in a diaper of red and gold silk, and were starred with medallions of many saints and martyrs, among whom was Saint Sebastian. He had chasubles also of amber-colored silk, and blue silk, and gold brocade, and yellow silk damask, and cloth of gold, figured with representations of the Passion and Crucifixion of Christ, and embroidered with lions and peacocks, and other emblems. Dalmatics of white satin and pink silk damask, decorated with tulips and dolphins, and fleurs de lis. Altar frontals of crimson velvet and blue linen, and many corporals, chalice, wells, and sudaria. In the mystic offices to which such things were put, there was something that quickened his imagination, for these treasures and everything that he collected in his lovely house were to be to him means to forgetfulness, models by which he could escape for a season from the fear that seemed to him at times to be almost too great to be borne. Upon the walls of the lonely locked room where he had spent so much of his boyhood, he had hung with his own hands the terrible portrait whose changing features showed him the real degradation of his life, and in front of it had draped the purple and gold pall as a curtain. For weeks he would not go there, would forget the hero's painted thing, and get back his light heart, his wonderful joyousness, his passionate absorption in mere existence. Then suddenly some night he would creep out of the house, go down to dreadful places near Blue Gate Fields, and stay there day after day until he was driven away. On his return he would sit in front of the picture, sometimes loathing it and himself, but filled at other times with that pride of individualism that is half the fascination of sin, and smiling with secret pleasure at the misshapen shadow that had to bear the burden that should have been his own. After a few years he could not endure to be alone out of England, and gave up the villa that he had shared at Trouville with Lord Henry, as well as the little white wallet in house at Algiers, where they had more than once spent in the winter. He hated to be separated from the picture that was such a part of his life, and was also afraid that during his absence someone might gain access to the room, in spite of the elaborate bars that he had caused to be placed upon the door. He was quite conscious that this would tell them nothing. It was true that the portrait still preserved, under all the fullness and ugliness of the face, its marked likeness to himself. But what could they learn from that? He would laugh at anyone who tried to taunt him. He had not painted it. What was it to him how vile and full of shame it looked. Even if he told them, would they believe it? Yet he was afraid. Sometimes, when he was down at his great house in Nottinghamshire, entertaining the fashionable young men of his own rank, who were his chief companions, and astounding the county by the wanton luxury and gorgeous splendor of his mode of life, he would suddenly leave his guests and rush back to town to see that the door hadn't been tampered with.